Once upon a quiet evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky into shades of orange and purple, a young man named Ion was walking home through a narrow, dusty road on the outskirts of town. The streets were unusually silent that day, with only the faint sound of wind brushing against broken fences and scattered leaves. As he walked, something unusual caught his attention. A faint, almost desperate whimper. He stopped. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but then it came again. Weak, trembling, full of pain. Ion followed the sound, his heart beginning to beat faster. It led him toward an old roadside ditch, half covered with dry grass and trash. The smell was unpleasant and the place looked abandoned, somewhere people avoided. But the sound was real. He carefully stepped closer and looked down. And what he saw froze him. A small puppy barely a few weeks old, lay trapped at the bottom. Its fur was covered in mud, one of its legs looked injured, and its tiny body trembled with exhaustion. Its eyes, filled with fear and helplessness, looked up at Ion as if begging for help. For a moment Ion hesitated. The ditch was deep and unstable. Climbing down could be dangerous. There was no one else around. No help. No safety. He looked around hoping someone would pass by. No one came. The puppy whimpered again, this time softer, weaker, like it was losing the strength to cry. That was the moment everything changed. Ion took a deep breath. "Don't worry. I'm here," he whispered. Without thinking twice, he slowly climbed down into the ditch, gripping the loose soil carefully. His hands got dirty, his shoes slipped, but he didn't stop. When he finally reached the puppy, he gently picked it up. The tiny creature didn't resist. It didn't bark. It simply leaned into his hands as if it had already decided to trust him. And in that fragile moment, something unspoken formed between them. A bond. Ion carefully climbed back up, holding the puppy close to his chest. His heart was racing, not from fear anymore but from a strange sense of responsibility. The puppy was still alive. But just barely. As he reached the top, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. Dark clouds were rolling in. The storm was coming. And this was only the beginning. Pushpin moral of the story. Kindness in a moment of hesitation can become the difference between life and death. Even the smallest act of compassion can save a life and change your own forever. Clapperboard Part 2, The Storm of Survival. Ion held the fragile puppy close to his chest as the wind began to rise. The once quiet evening had suddenly turned restless. Leaves swirled across the road, and the sky darkened with heavy clouds. The first drop of rain fell. Then another. Within seconds, it turned into a storm. Ion quickly removed his jacket and wrapped the puppy inside, shielding it from the cold rain. The tiny creature barely moved, its weak breaths brushing against his wrist. Every second mattered now. "We have to get you somewhere safe," Ion whispered, his voice firm but filled with concern. The nearest veterinary clinic was nearly 2 kilometers away. Normally it would be an easy walk, but not like this. Not in the storm. Not with the roads turning into mud and water. Still he didn't stop. Each step became heavier. His shoes sank into the wet ground. Rain soaked his clothes, his hair, his face, but he kept moving forward. The puppy suddenly let out a faint cry. Ion stopped. He gently opened the jacket to check on it. Its eyes were half closed now, its breathing slower than before. Panic rushed through him. "No, no, stay with me," he said, his voice trembling. He looked around desperately. That's when he saw a small roadside tea stall, its dim yellow light flickering through the rain. Without wasting a second, he ran toward it. Inside, an old man stood behind the counter, surprised to see Ion drenched and shaking. "Please? I need help," Ion said, placing the puppy carefully on the table. The old man leaned closer, his expression softening instantly. "Ya Allah, this poor soul," he murmured. He quickly brought a dry cloth and some warm water. Together, they gently cleaned the mud off the puppy's body. The tiny leg injury became clearer now, it was swollen and bruised. "We must keep it warm," the old man said. He lit a small heater nearby and handed Ion a towel. Minutes felt like hours. The storm raged outside, but inside that small stall there was hope. The puppy moved slightly. Ion's heart skipped a beat. "It's still fighting," he said softly. After a while the rain began to slow. The old man looked at Ion and nodded. "You should take it to the clinic now. Don't delay." Ion wrapped the puppy again, this time more carefully, and stepped back into the wet night. But now he wasn't just walking. He was racing against time. Clapperboard Part 3, The Fight for Life. By the time Ion reached the veterinary clinic, his legs felt numb and his body exhausted, but he didn't care. He pushed the door open. "Help. Please," he called out. A young veterinarian rushed forward, immediately taking the puppy into her hands. Her face turned serious as she examined it. "What happened?" she asked quickly. "I found him in a ditch. He's been like this. Please save him," Ayan replied, struggling to catch his breath. Without wasting time, she carried the puppy into the treatment room. "Wait outside." Those 2 words felt heavier than anything Ayan had faced that night. He sat down, his hands still shaking. Drops of water fell from his clothes onto the floor. His eyes stayed fixed on the closed door. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Each second felt like a lifetime. Inside, faint sounds of medical tools and hurried movement could be heard. Ayan clenched his fists, silently praying. "Please, just let him live." Finally the door opened. The veterinarian stepped out. Ayan stood up immediately. "How is he?" She paused for a moment. "That puppy is incredibly lucky you found him when you did," she said. "He was severely dehydrated, injured, and close to hypothermia. A few more hours, and he wouldn't have survived." Ayan's eyes filled with relief. "But," she continued, "he's not completely safe yet. The next 24 hours are critical." Ayan nodded without hesitation. "I'll stay." The veterinarian smiled gently. "You must really care about him." Ayan looked toward the small room where the puppy lay, now connected to a drip, wrapped in warmth. "He trusted me," Ayan said quietly. "I can't leave him now." Hours passed as Ayan sat beside the tiny life he had pulled from the edge of death. Then something happened. The puppy slowly opened its eyes. For the first time without fear. It looked at Ayan. And weakly wagged its tail. In that moment Ayan smiled. Because he knew. This wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new life. Pushpin moral of the story. True heroes are not those with power, but those who choose to act when it matters most. Even in the darkest moments, compassion can create a new beginning.